Good morning.
Good morning.
Who's been watching the World Cup? The one game I sat down to watch, and I'm like, I've been here 10 minutes, and they've scored like 6 goals. What's going on? This morning, we are, as a community, continuing our study on healing. Last week, we spoke just briefly around setting up that healing is an experience that's lived from the inside out. And curing is where we have a real clear sense and intention and perhaps an expectation that a physical out picturing is going to change. It's going to be different. Well, it's always fun when you declare several months in advance what you'll be talking about in another time or season, because as I declared that we was focused on healing, I've had my own opportunity to do just that. And you know, healing can really be not only about physical or mental, metaphysical or spiritual, the four methods of healing that we touched on last week. Healing can also be an experience of alignment where all the pieces come together. And I am hopeful because I absolutely know that across the planet, healing is happening. Say that with me. Healing is happening. One more time. Healing is happening. It is happening across the planet. This gentleman right here was gaining a lot of fame this week, as he, of course, is a devout Brazilian fan of World Cup. And if you can see, he's holding a replica of the trophy. And he's crying. The passion with which the Brazilians, and I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law that live in the capital of Brazil, and I'm so happy that I didn't have a need to be there with them at this time, because the passion is infectious. Passion's infectious. So here's this very, very sad. I mean, I was watching people crying, and I'm like, I don't think I get it. And my husband said, no, honey, you're from America. You don't get it. This is it. This is the World Cup. I said, okay, I'll keep watching. Well, this gentleman did something very interesting, and I'm going to call it healing while he was at this game. Next slide. Here he is offering his trophy to a member of the Germany fan club. Of course, that was the team they were playing, Brazil and Germany. And if I need to catch anybody up, Brazil lost. And it's a big deal, which is why I really am glad I'm not there. This man goes from grief-stricken to saying, you deserve this. And he gives it away. Healing is happening. Together? Healing is happening. The reason that I know that healing is happening is because wholeness is our true nature. Beyond winning and losing, beyond the score, wholeness is our divine birthright. And wholeness does not necessarily come through a win or a loss. Wholeness just is. Let's think about another story. Thank you, Jim. Remember the woman who went to Jesus while he was surrounded by the crowd? People pushing is the way that the story is often told, as Jesus is making his way down the road. And all of a sudden he turns and he said, someone touched me. His disciples said, lots of people are touching you. He said, no, someone received healing. Someone with an intention, not just an escort for myself. And as he turned around and he said, who touched me? There was a woman who had touched the hem of his garment. And she said, it was me. And he says, your faith has made you whole. Your faith is what's essential to the experience of having a healing from touching his robe. Now you may say, well, those are one of those miracle stories. Well, let's remember in Unity that we interpret things metaphysically. So not only are we the woman who touches, we're also the disciples who are a little indignant. Of course somebody touched you, it's crowded. And we're also Jesus. That part of ourselves that knows it is done unto us as we believe. Let's all breathe that in for a moment. It is done unto us as we believe. Let's shift in an evolutionary consciousness way up a little bit to it is done as we believe. Together? It is done as we believe. This woman's belief was so strong, her conviction so strong. Now, we don't know exactly what it was that was wrong with her or what her detailed life experience was like after that, but there was a moment where her spirit and the divine spirit of wisdom and love and life merged, and they connected together. That same healing for whatever we have happening in our life can occur. So we jokingly talked about the football players. Passion, living with that passion. What do we do with that passion when healing begins to be something that we focus upon? When healing begins to be a place in which we go, all right, I don't know if this is going to work. One of my favorite authors, Carolyn Myss, writes this: we are not meant to stay wounded. We are supposed to move through our tragedies and challenges and to help each other move through the many painful episodes of our lives. By remaining stuck in the power of our wounds, we block our own transformation. We overlook the greater gifts inherent in our wounds, the strength to overcome them, and the lessons they're meant to receive through them. Wounds are the means through which we enter the hearts of other people. They are meant to teach us to become compassionate and wise. That's a lot to take. My wounds are meant to teach me to become compassionate and wise. I see a couple heads nodding. Does that mean everybody else is a no? What if we really could take any idea of loss, of lack, or of limitation? What if we could truly bring that idea to the simple front of our consciousness and say, I'm willing to be healed? Now, Carolyn Myss has an explanation for that. If you've read any of her books, Anatomy of the Spirit, or Why People Don't Heal and How They Can, she talks about living from our wounds, and that our wounds become a part of who we are. This morning, I'm here to remind us that our wounds are part of our human experience. They are not who we are. And whether it's a wound that we had as a young child, whether there was an incident as a young child that now has a belief ingrained in our mind that we're not safe, or perhaps that we're not worthy, whatever those beliefs are, they come to the surface, they show up in experiences again and again and again, because they are begging to be healed. Our spiritual consciousness tells us that we have that strength within to walk through that experience of healing. Bless you. Our roots in the Unity movement with Phineas P. Quimby, I mentioned him a little bit last week. He had a beautiful, beautiful process that he uses. For you see, he's like Carolyn Myss. So Carolyn Myss is a modern day medical intuitive. Phineas Quimby, it's one of the founders of the New Thought movement. He was actually a teacher of Mary Baker Eddy. He was also an influencer of co-founders of Unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And this is what he developed as his experience of working with folks, acknowledging that in our humanity we have wounds. It says that Quimby had a process where he would sit with an individual and they would just be silent. So no conversation. Quimby could begin to sense the ailment or the illness. He could sense in the room what was happening in the other's mind, heart, soul, body. He would begin then to deduce the cause and apply a treatment, and then explain to the person a new mental perspective. So he was having an experience of being a vehicle for that healing transformation to happen, and yet he was sharing with them what that cause was. Now you may say, what does Quimby still have to do with us today? P. Phineas Quimby, as one of those pioneering teachers on health and healing, is a lot of what things that we see in our culture everywhere and all around us, around healing as being possible. They all stem from him. They stem from some of the work that he did and from the experience of getting clearer and clearer that we are not our circumstances. We are not our wounds. He was shifting that and began to see the person in the wholeness that they are. When I was in seminary, there was a wonderful woman. Her name's Reverend Dorothy Pearson. She's recently passed on to the other dimension of existence. But Dorothy was ordained by Charles Fillmore. And so she's one of those beautiful legends. It's always a privilege to have a few minutes with. And I went in to pray with her. I said, okay, I'm ready. Sitting in my chair, and she was very regal in her wingback chair. Are we going to get started? Her eyes were still closed. I'm ready for prayer when you are, Reverend Dorothy. She said, shh. We already are. She was so clear about the silence, clearing the mind of its attachment, clearing the mind of its story, and being present to the presence. What if that's all we really had to do? To be present to the presence. Let's say that together. All I have to do is be present to the presence. Together? All I have to do is be present to the presence. Yes. Because healing is happening and wholeness is our divine birthright. Healing is happening. Wholeness is our divine birthright. There's a beautiful story about a Hindu teacher. And he had this experience with a student who, like some of us, I'm sure, when the student would come for their one-on-one, like I did with Dorothy, would want to ask lots and lots of questions. But today the Hindu master had a lesson. He said, here's some salt. The student opened his hand, put a big glob of salt in it. He said, now go find a glass of water and put it in there. So the student put the salt in the water. The teacher said, now drink it. The student did. And the teacher said, now how was that? He said, it was very, very bitter. Very, very bitter. He said, okay, here's some more salt. And the student really begins to wish he'd not asked so many questions. More salt in his hand, and the student thinks, oh, not again. The teacher says, take it to the lake. Let's go for a walk together. And so the student and the teacher go to the edge of the lake, and the student drops it into the water. The teacher says, now bend down. Drink some of that water. How was it? The student says, well, it was fresh. He said, exactly. The pain and the wounds in our life are going to just simply be there. Are we going to be a glass where they make us bitter? Or are we going to be like the lake where there's so much in our expanding consciousness that that one little piece or that one situation or that one incident is not going to make any difference. What if we can be like the lake? That's my question to you today. What if we could be like the lake, expanding in our consciousness? Because you know what? In the lake, there were many other organisms that were helping to dissolve that salt, right? Well, who is in the lake with us? This is not really a rhetorical question. Anyone want to answer it? Who's in the lake with us? Everybody. Everybody's in the lake with us. And so everyone in this room is in the lake together, right? Yeah. And so are we willing to accept that level of participation in our own healing? Because as different members of the community, as different parts of the lake heal, what happens on the planet? Healing is happening, right? We're right back to our intention. Together, healing is happening. Healing is happening. Wholeness is my divine birthright. And we're all in this together. Now, who of you have had a moment where you don't think there's anyone else experiencing the same kind of pain as you at any given time? Raise your hand. There we go. I recently went through a box. Many of you know that my family moved to a new townhouse. And so this past week we went through a box, and there was a cassette tape. It was a cassette tape of my very first Unity minister giving a talk 2 days after the birth of my daughter. I have a 13-year-old. My husband said, "Have you ever listened to this?" I said, "No." He said, "I just did. It's probably a good idea that it's been 13 years since this talk happened." I said, "Why?" He said, "Jennifer, she gave a blow-by-blow picture of the birth of our daughter as a metaphysical lesson." I said, "What?" I was mortified. And then I go, oh, wait a minute, it's 13 years, who cares? Glad I didn't walk around in that community for several years knowing that that's what had been told, because truly, each and every one of us, through some aspect of pain or discomfort, is answering a call for something new to emerge, something new to be born within us, something new within the passion of our heart. Some of you know this story. When I was in labor on the way to Fairfax Hospital, Friday morning, 9 a.m., could not get on the Beltway. My husband's taking these back roads through Annandale. We pass a church marquee, and I remember I was in the back seat of, I think it was a Ford Explorer. I'd been in labor for almost 20 hours. I was so tired. And I saw this marquee as we rode by, and it was one of the only churches I'd been to, actually, in my whole time living in Northern Virginia. And that marquee said something about joy. Well, I already knew my daughter's name was going to be Joy. That had easily been revealed to me, actually, almost before I knew I was pregnant. But after I had that baby, this wonderful man came in to see us, and he said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "You know what I need you to do? I need you to go back to that church." What was that road? Little River Turnpike. "I need you to go back to that church and take a picture of that marquee, because they might change it tomorrow." And everybody in the birthing room, I told them this story, that there was this marquee that talked about joy, and they didn't believe me. He went back to take that picture. And the picture said, "Sometimes joy needs pain to give it birth." See why I thought I was having a hallucination? sometimes that joy and passion that's within us needs us to move through that place of woundedness, needs us to move through that place of pain, needs us to acknowledge that we are more than our healing journey. We are the divine beings in which wholeness is our birthright. Divine wholeness is my birthright. Together? Divine wholeness is my birthright. You might be saying, she sure is having us talk a whole lot today. I am, because here's what I know is true for every one of us. Healing is not passive. Healing takes illogical, sometimes irrational choices. It asks us to stretch. And so the power of the voice is one of the ways that we can do that. As we look at ways in our life which we're called to heal, the mind serves us. We don't serve the mind. The mind serves us. And so whatever we put an emphasis on, whatever we focus our attention from an aspect of healing, we're going to have more of that experience. Now, as I said last week, and I'll say every time I speak about healing, it is not that we've created the situation in our life. We're going to debunk that, right? That's probably third grade unity teaching. I create my experience, so I'm creating my friends, or I'm creating my birthday party, or no, we're not creating the circumstance. We are creating an internal vibration in response to those circumstances, and we can be so identified with the circumstance that that wound becomes a part of us. And we don't know what it is to live without it. A colleague was sharing a story with me recently. He'd been a Unity minister for 20-some years. The doctor had said, "You need to have heart surgery." He said, "Jennifer, I did all the meditation. I did all the affirmations. I went to all the healers. I did all the Reiki." He said, "And the night before my surgery, a friend called. A friend in the science and spirituality world called. And that friend said, sometimes the fastest way to spiritual healing is to have it cut out." My friend said, "Jennifer, I didn't learn that in Unity Seminary." I said, "Well, maybe what we learned in Unity Seminary gets us to the point of where we can hear those kinds of things." And sure enough, my friend had the heart surgery, very speedy recovery. He's still with us 15 years later. He said, "But you know, I had to shift before the surgery and know that the cutting out experience, the surgical procedure, was there to be my friend." What if we were willing to say any internal, emotional pain is there to befriend us? What if we were willing to say that that experience, that relationship with that person, was here to be part of our transformation journey? Can I get an amen? And as we all do it, the whole planet is lifted. Because healing is happening, right? Together? Healing is happening. Wholeness is my divine birthright. Together? Wholeness is my divine birthright. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. Namaste.